Yay, we're live. And in the nick of time too. My fault entirely. Forgot it was on my channel. So here we are again on our next topic. I'm not counting how many episodes we've done because I've lost track already. But I think we did 3 or 4, didn't we? Something like that.
I think this is the 4th.
This might be the 4th. Right. Yeah. Okay. Yes, there's a logic behind that somewhere. So, obviously, you can't completely cover a subject like death as we were doing, but we had a bit of a go. And like anything, we may revisit these as and when people feel the need or something new comes up or whatever. But we've kind of shuffled on a bit to something that is equally big, can be terribly traumatic for the people who suffer from it and those around them as well. And that's really addiction. And we're not limiting this to any particular kind of addiction because there are many forms of it. People tend to think, oh, it's drinking or it's gambling but it can be almost anything that people can get addicted to. And there are many theories as to how it happens or why it happens. Not all of which I can say I agree with. I've been looking into it a bit, refreshing my memory on the research. And it's a bloody minefield. It really is.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Like, it was always put down to if you were an addict or if you had an addiction, you always either were an alcoholic, a gambler, or a drug taker. That was like the 3 basics, but yet it does go across to so many different things, even things that you wouldn't think that were something that the people would, even things that like for someone who for work, for ones that you can be addicted to work in the sense that like you fill your full time just with work and you don't do anything else, and that can be just as bad as anything else, I suppose.
Absolutely. People get burnt out, and our culture has definitely made that out to be a good thing. Oh, you work or you're seen to be busy or present. And obviously that shifted and changed with a lot more people working from home and at home. But the need, it's usually driven by a compulsion. And whether that compulsion is physical, psychological, spiritual, emotional, whatever. And normally it's all of those things that will drive a behavior to happen. And it's so overpowering. It will cut through any logic, any common sense, any what you would normally think of as being good reasons not to. All goes out the window when someone's need is that strong. And as you say, it can be for anything. It's not necessarily those classic things. And gambling now is a massive problem because people can do that online. I have a massive problem with that, and I always have done. But lately, it's gotten well out of hand.
Yeah. I go through phases of things. Food is my thing, but if I can't do food, I'll buy. And if I can't, I think I can do little bits of other things. Food has always been my main thing. Like, I've done smoking before. I've managed to give up that.
Well done.
But then I've had little bits where I've gone through phases of like, because at the minute, especially for me, I haven't been able to eat, but I've bought, even though I know I really can't afford it and I shouldn't be buying. I've done it because it's a fix, I guess, for what's going on, essentially. And I know that very much so. I've done the same with gambling before, like on the online, whether it be on football bets or slot things or whatever. I've done that as well before.
Yeah. It's knowing what drives you, isn't it? It's knowing what the need is. As you say, when you can't do something else, then it's, I still want to do something. And there are many theories about, but is it about being in control, doing something, in other words, having some measure of control when like everything around you seems out of control? Because that's can feel fairly common. It's a form of self-medication almost, because you're doing something to make yourself feel better than even momentarily, and it normally is quite fleeting, but you will feel temporarily better, which is very powerful.
Especially like, because normally when the stuff arrives, I'll go and then put it to one side. That's it. Like,
the moment's gone, isn't it? The pleasure is completely
completely. And I know this, you know what I mean? I totally do. It's so weird. But I do wonder when so like with, because drug and alcohol are more the main things, in whenever, if you put addiction into Google search, you get loads for drug and alcohol related stuff. They're the
Yes.
ones that come up first, always. And I always wonder if it's because the body gets addicted to those things, like not just a mental addiction. Is it because it's a physical addiction as well? But then I suppose, to me, food is the same. I like, but yet, if you overeat, it's always just classed as greed. It isn't. It's getting better now, I think, in terms of stuff. But for me, the reason I ate was because it made us feel calm. It was the way I felt. It wasn't what I was eating. I mean, yes, I probably opt for better stuff, things I liked. Who wouldn't? You're not going to choose a lettuce over a cream cake, are you? It's like, that's, you know
Never.
what I mean? Like, exactly. You wouldn't. And so, but it was always the calmness I felt whilst I'm eating. Everything's gone. Everything's zoned out. Everything is just. It's like nothing's the matter in the world, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And I've done that since I was a child, and that started from a trauma when I was a child.
Yeah.
That's what I coped with, and
It's
I
a
know
way of
that.
surviving. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's a survival mechanism and a way of kind of dealing with, of kind of anesthetizing yourself against the feelings which are going to be there, because of other stuff that's gone on before. As you say, you've got an awareness, and when you have an awareness of where it comes from, it's useful to a point, but it doesn't solve it, because it happens on so many other levels as well. And quite often people can get counselling and other forms of therapy which will help. But I always said when I was a hypnotherapist that actually food, which is an issue for an awful lot of people for all kinds of reasons, seemed to be the hardest thing of all. It was really the most challenging therapy, because you can't give up food completely. Like cigarettes, and stop smoking, never go near another cigarette. And it's not easy. I mean, I completely acknowledge that. But you don't ever have to smoke again. With food, you have to actually change your relationship to it. And that is incredibly hard unless you deal with the underlying trauma, the seeding events that started it, and rewire almost the body's coping mechanisms. And it's very, very hard to do. Very hard to do.
I think, for me, that I did that to a point up until everything happened again. It's like, that just trauma that I had, that I didn't realize I'd gone back. Up until that point, I felt like I'd gone through it all. I was in a different place. I was a different person. You know what I mean? But up until that point, it just sort of changed. But I've seen alcohol affect people, family members and stuff, to the point of, it's sad, isn't it? It's one of them things. It's like they obviously block. I guess it's a pain blocker or something. We do like
Absolutely
temporary fixes that then lead to this. I remember, I think my CP anyway I had before. He used, like, he said, imagine like life is a bucket, right? And you've got like water in this bucket, and then all the different things in life come into this bucket as stones, for instance. So obviously that raises the water level. So you've got like your own life problems, your love life problems, your family life problems, your work life problems, and all these come into this bucket as stones, you know what I mean? And then eventually it just starts to overflow. So you do something temporary, whether that be starting off with a few glasses of wine, or some drugs, or food, like with me, and that for that brief moment it eases that. So it's but that, he said, imagine that pipe goes out, but then it goes back into the bucket because eventually it ends up sort of making it like a lot worse, which, yeah.
It's true. A lot of those coping mechanisms do temporarily seem to solve, but once they get kind of out of hand or overplayed, the body gets used to whatever it is that's being done to it, or the high that you're getting from the behaviour, and then it tends to need more. And then it stops you actually dealing with the problem, but you're still needing to medicate more and more. It's horrible to watch someone going through it. I mean, it really is torturous for those people around. And I'm a firm believer that people who live with and care for those with addictions also need the therapy. I kind of feel that it's because they really, because they're dealing with the fallout of it, and they'd never want to upset the person that they're with if they could help it. But obviously they're carrying their own loads too. And they might medicate in other ways. But it's almost like, certainly my experience with the food side of things. Again, everybody is absolutely and completely different. It's so individual. And this is one of the challenges of anyone doing therapy in this area. But quite often it's almost like filling a void. It's like you're trying to fill something that's missing, trying to sort of complete, trying to get to a state of equilibrium. And of course you never reach it because the goalposts keep moving, and the problems that the addiction causes then outweigh hugely any of the benefits that it was bringing.
Yeah. Whether, like you said, it's filling this void, whether that's a PM blocking something out,
Emotional pain usually.
I think that's the way that with addiction is although all these different things and all these ways of coping are different, it stems from the same thing, isn't it? Like in that you're trying to cope, for want of a better way of putting it. You're trying to get through, you're trying to deal with whatever it is that is affecting you.
Absolutely. And at the time, there isn't always someone that you could talk to, or you don't necessarily want to talk at the time. You're not always in a position to. So, I understand people have got to find their ways of surviving. The thing is, it can very quickly become more of a problem than the original problem. And like you say, people always think of addictions as being drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, what have you. They don't actually see all of the other insidious forms because they don't look the same. People make judgments about other people based, they go on about control and things. It's like, God, if it was that simple, that no one would have a problem. It truly is not that black and white, and it's not helpful, because the minute someone's made to feel worse about themselves because of whatever their addiction is, the more likely they are to be driven to do more of it, because it's going to create the same pain.
Definitely. But then being this turmoil of guilt, of feeling of, because you've given into it again, of whatever, and then need to feel better again, so then use the same tool to fix that, which then just puts you back in that, as you said, in that circle. So
it's a real spiral. And I always say spirals can go both ways. They can go up as well as down. But of course the ones that people are familiar with are the ones that go down. And quite often when you have done some work and started to deal with something, it seems to go away for a while, but it will come back. But normally it comes back slightly differently, so that you're now ready to deal with that aspect of it. And it's a lifelong process. It isn't a case of you have a few therapy sessions and it's gone. It doesn't work like that. Nothing ever does.
Which sadly is the way things are at the moment, isn't it? With things, is that you get sort of limited amount of therapy sessions, where I think in the scheme of things, we all could do with it all the time, at a different level of all the time. So whether it's just a monthly thing, or you need it twice a year, or you need it, twice a week.
Should be able to dip in and out of it as they happen. Probably you have an intensive block of it, which will work at getting back to whatever it was that started the whole thing, and unpick that. But then there will always be new waves of it that kind of come back afterwards. But I mean, NHS, obviously, countries strapped for money. They'll offer 6 sessions, I think it is. It's fairly standard, 6 to 8 sessions of therapy, and that's straightforward counselling. That's not an advanced therapy. Or if you're lucky, you
Right.
might get the CBT, which is brilliant
Well,
for
I
some
had
people. It
CBT.
doesn't work for everyone.
I
Like
had
anything.
CBT, and it worked for me. But I had it for a year. Like I had
Wow.
fortnightly. It started off as fortnightly sessions, and then it went to monthly. But well, it was still fortnightly. I saw my CPN fortnightly, but I also had a peer support worker in the opposite fortnightly. So it was like two times a month essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that helped me a lot. You know what I mean? Um, it's just obviously that's not usually offered. And I mean, I asked for bereavement counselling, as I told you, and I got 6 sessions. I mean, I know
Yeah.
that's not to do with the addiction, but you know what I mean? Like
Nothing's
that's
unconnected, is it?
yeah,
Nothing, and it doesn't take too much more additional trauma, like we were saying before, that perfect storm of what you went through,
yeah,
to kind of kick back to that default behaviour, which is okay, but I need to feel better because I feel really crap.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. It's and cognitive behavioural therapy is marvellous, and to get a year of it is fantastic, and also again quite unusual because people see it as a quick therapy.
yeah,
But it's the kind of ongoing support that one needs afterwards. And like I say, sometimes you can kind of go off it, go off the rail a bit, and just needs a bit of guidance back, and that should be there.
yeah, definitely. But I mean, I I don't. Well, I suppose like with addictions, I know that like I don't know how you word this the best way. Um, with drinking drugs, for instance, and gambling, I believe like there's a lot of thing around like the amount of like how do I put this? I'm trying to put this the right way without making it sound. Um, so uh, we'll take drink for instance, right?
Yeah.
To keep up the intake or whatever of alcohol or drugs, because especially drugs are expensive, people turn to different things. That's what I'm trying to say.
The antisocial behaviour that goes along with having an addiction like that
Yeah,
is the social problem of people shoplifting, thieving, doing anything
yeah,
to actually get their hands on
yeah,
money.
yeah,
Yeah, often stealing from friends, family, and because they're
yeah,
so driven. And I think maybe you're right. That's why it gets more attention, because there's a real economic kind of kickback to it all. There is whereas perhaps some other forms of addiction don't appear to be, or
yeah.
a different thing. Yeah. But online
I mean,
gambling, oh my God, geez, the
yeah,
amount of money that people can lose on that is
exactly.
phenomenal.
And so easy.
Mm.
Um, and so obviously, they could get in trouble with borrowing for those things, and there is an element of that for me with the food thing. Not like it's an extreme, but I would borrow off my parents and say it was for the gas, and when it went, and I was just buying food with it, and I feel bad for that now. I'm thinking about it, but like, you know what I mean?
Mm.
I would just say, "Oh, can you?" I'd just say to my mum, "Oh, is it possible? I earn £20. It's just I need to top my gas up or whatever." She'd be like, "Bloody hell, you and your gas," and I'd be like, "Oh," and then I'd buy
Use
a
a lot of
ticket.
gas.
Do you know what I mean? And so, but I don't know. I couldn't ever go and steal something. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't go and
Yeah, there are
steal.
levels of what people will
Yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
don't. I don't know how extreme. And I mean, obviously, my food. I wouldn't have got the size I was if it wasn't extreme. But I don't know how extreme that would have to be.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
I it's a hard one, that, because it's such um leave it. So
At the door, isn't it? Someone's trying to deliver something to you.
it's me delivery for me. Sing
Someone is
again.
at the door.
Oh, hopefully my son will hear.
Ah, he's there, is
So
he?
good.
Yeah, just was alerting you.
Yeah.
Oh, bless. Yeah.
He usually leaves it next door for me if like. One second, I'll just wait with her. So I always see him.
That's all right. Can you talk to him through that and just tend to leave it?
Yeah, well, I thought David might have heard, but then he might be answering the work call because he's working from home, my son.
Yeah.
So
Right. I'll just say quick hellos to people while you're dealing with that. I'll say hello, Andrea.
Right.
Hello, Joan. Hello, Chris. Hello, Jason. Oh, and Nick's joined us as well. And he's just said here, I see addiction as something you feel compelled to do, but afterwards you feel guilt. That's certainly true in some cases. The level of guilt it will probably depend on what the addiction is and the impact it's having. As Loney mentioned with food, you can feel remorse afterwards. But, if somebody smokes, they don't usually feel that guilty. They might, they might feel they've let themselves down a bit, but it won't come with the same amount of guilt as someone who's lost $5,000 on betting on online gambling. And I have known people who've lost a lot of money, and it's one of the newer addictions that I think is going to become much more of a problem as time goes on. I worked with a company that were involved or seemed to be getting involved in the very early online betting when it was just made legal, and I had a real problem with it then, and I went and did something else. I didn't work for them anymore. But now seeing what's happened and personally knowing some people who've been caught up in this, it used to be a guy thing, going into a betting shop and spending your wages on the horses or the dogs. But these days, those adverts for online gambling are every 2 minutes, and they are aimed at women and young people and growing their audience. They are absolutely horrendous. I have such a problem with the way it's being done, the fact that it's allowed to happen. But that's my personal rant. So there we go, rant over.
Cigarettes aren't allowed to be advertised anymore.
No, exactly.
That wouldn't be allowed, would you? He wasn't there, so he must have gone to next door in the end anyway.
Jolly good, as long as you get your parcel, because I bet it was something important.
It's me chemist meds.
Oh, your prescription. Oh gosh, yes, very important.
But yeah, I get what Nick's saying. Addiction is something you feel compelled to do, but afterwards feeling guilty. But then I also agree with you that I think in some cases the guilt is beyond the. I don't think some people may allow themselves to feel guilty.
Yeah, depends what's driving the behaviour in the first place. I think that there are people with alcohol and drug problems that feel absolutely horrible when they've had a binge or lapse, and there are other people who seem to have a complete disregard for anyone else's feelings. It's more of a personal thing, I think, what emotions you feel. But if you were feeling brilliant about yourself, you wouldn't be doing it. So clearly there's.
I think that is another block of feeling anything. Why they just go, well, I don't care. It's kind of like it's still a thing because they don't allow themselves to care because they couldn't do what they're doing, and they need to do what they're doing essentially, etc. So it's kind of like
when I was a therapist, if somebody said I don't care, that was a great big red warning flag that said actually they care very much indeed.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. Oh, I don't care. Like, I think you just might. Certain things people say and the way they say them, and a clue gives you big clues into what's going on.
I think addiction, if you do anything to an extreme where it affects your life, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That is what it is, whether that's work, sex, sleeping around, whatever. That can be I know of people who've done that because they're looking for something, they're looking for love, they expect it, and that doesn't happen or whatever, or become addicted to the feeling of being wanted or whatever it is. I'm not really sure, in that
There's
sense.
definitely a need to be needed, and in fact, you get a lot of sort of codependent relationships and stuff like that, where people are almost unable to countenance being on their own and are desperate for somebody else. And it's that whole feeling of not feeling complete unless there is something external to you that makes you happy, that makes you feel good.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing, is you're putting the responsibility for your well-being, your happiness,
yeah,
outside of yourself. You're giving the power to somebody, something,
else.
some substance, some company to make you feel okay, and it doesn't work. It just doesn't.
Yeah. I was trying to think of other things, like of other things, but I suppose anything, and then there's kind of like a border between, because I know people who are excessively clean. Like they'll be sort of sitting waiting for you to like put your cup down and finish your cup of tea so they can pick it up, run in the kitchen. And well, in fact, there was a friend of mine who did this exactly. She'd invite you for a cup of tea, then she would sit there waiting, and she'd be on the edge of her chair waiting while you finished a cup of tea. As soon as she put the cup of tea down, she'd be picking the cup of tea up, running in the kitchen, washing the thing, and then she'd be constantly bleaching her dishcloths, and and I used to think it was really obsessive, but then I'm kind of like, is that addiction or is that more OCD?
Well, again, there may be a bit of a blurring. Again, it's a compulsion to a behaviour, so it's a form of addiction, because it's thinking that I can't countenance the world if I don't do this. I have to do this to make myself feel safe, which is where a lot of OCD comes in. It's a need to feel safe rather than necessarily fill an emotional hole. But they're not so different. And like you say, I'm not one of those people, believe you me, that spiders live high rise in my house. We have dust. But yeah, I know I've known people who are like it, and they're no fun to live with. But some people take advantage of it, and they will go and work as cleaners. They will literally turn that obsession and need into a job.
A business, yeah.
But it's going to be a problem if someone is obsessively cleaning and they're not sleeping, they're not looking after themselves, and they're, it's not in hand. Then obviously, yes, that's a real problem. It's going to limit their life.
Because then it can extend to, well, I can't go there because that place will be dirty, and I haven't been able to clean it and whatever. So that I guess that can extend to those sorts of things.
Yeah, you're going to have quite a lot of people with things like that now because of the COVID thing, and there was a real phase when people who were naturally a bit anxious and inclined to go that way got very, very scared about it, and very, very, let's disinfect everything. Now, actually, you notice most people have kind of come off that a bit. It doesn't mean they're not careful, but that level the need for it has been and gone, and they've come back to a balance. If somebody's got an absolute OCD, they wouldn't have that balance back. They'd still be stuck in it.
No, it'd be, yeah. Yeah. They would have, it would still be struggling with that.
Yeah. And that's the difference between having a natural fearful reaction to something and developing a psychological issue. That's the difference.
Yeah.
And as Andrea said here, with online gambling, they seem to think it's fine to advertise if they had a disclaimer, and they do. You've seen them stop when the fun stops. It's like, yeah, what the actual insert rude word here are they talking about? If somebody could stop when the fun stopped, those companies would not be making the money they're making. They make 8% of their money out of 20% of the people who bet with them. The 80-20 rule that applies to most business, and they damn well know it, and they'll make the right noises. But they do not want those big rollers to stop spending money with them. Yeah, and if someone's addicted, of course they'll ignore the warnings. There's lots of mechanisms that are supposed to help, but if someone's really into gambling that deeply, there's a desperate need to try and win back the money. And it's people who haven't got that money who desperately keep spending. It's horrible. I just think it's so insidious, and it seems to be acceptable in our society. And I think that's, smoking's not acceptable, driving without a seatbelt's not acceptable, driving whilst drinking isn't acceptable. Why is gambling online and having it just open to everybody like that acceptable? Ugh.
Yeah.
Venting again, sorry.
It's true though. It's like half of our town is made up of betting shops now. It's like,
You've got a good few. We've only got a little town. We're not big here. I think
there's
one went. I
hardly
think we've got
any
two. But it's the online stuff. It's not actually going into a betting shop.
on the store. Yeah.
It's the bingo and the
Yeah, I
it's not
suppose
fun and
because it's so
sociable.
easy, isn't it? You can, you know, and you can do it at any time of the day and night.
And that's why there's much more, or there's becoming more of a female gambling problem than there ever was, because it's people with their, you know, laptops and their phones.
Yeah.
Sit and do it. I did know somebody that used it as a form of kind of stress relief. It was a distraction from stuff that was going on in their life. Under any other normal circumstance, you would never have thought in a million years that they would do it. And it cost them a lot of money. It absolutely affected their financial well-being, and that horrifies me. You know, it hooks you in. It's too easy. It's too easy.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I don't know, like, I suppose, and then that leads to, I mean, a lot of, you hear a lot of people who getting into serious debt and then didn't see any other way out apart from taking their own life.
It's I mean, every now and again you will read of someone. It's quite often someone, you know, it can be any age, any background, any whatever, and what they'll do is keep it secret as long as they can, and then the guilt very much comes into it, because often they're spending money that actually really isn't theirs. And this is where the real problem comes in, because they can't see a way out. They've got to win it back because it's their mortgage, rent, savings, whatever is gone. It's.
I watched a program with Paul Merson. He's a footballer.
Oh yes, he had a massive gambling problem, didn't he?
Yeah, a really big gambling problem, and he talked about that, and that was where I'd seen the thing about someone got into, like, I think he was in £30,000 worth of debt. His family didn't realise, and he took his own life because he just didn't see a way out. And that he was talking to them, but also he did this like thing where they did some work on his brain and stuff to show how much the brain reacted to the gambling.
Those ads.
Yeah.
Those ads. Just seeing the ads.
How much? So he says it's an illness. It's not like it's an illness, not well, it's an addiction, but an illness as well.
An addiction on that level is an illness, and what's happened is you actually rewire your brain. You reprogram your brain, but in the most negative way rather than in a positive way. So it's then very, very difficult to. It's kind of a conditioning thing. You know, it's like Pavlov's dogs, isn't it? You know, ring a bell, give them food. Every time you hear a bell ring, they're expecting food, and it's the same thing. They see it, and it goes to a very deep part of the brain that literally lights up those scans. And it's like, oh, thrills, excitement. Even if they don't consciously want it, that process is still happening. Yeah, it's really, really difficult. And, you know, you've got to feel for everyone involved in that situation. You know, and back in the day, all of the footballers and the sports people, they were all into gambling. It was part of what they did in their downtime. You know, it's very much a thing. It was part of their culture almost.
Well, yeah, drink, betting shops. Because it started as betting shops, I think, and then obviously because it became so easy in online gambling, it just opened up a whole new world, didn't it? Really.
There's everything. There's bingo and there's poker and there's all these weird games. I've never actually even gone on them. I don't have it. I don't have a gambling gene in that sense. I'm far too risk averse, and I just know that they're in it to make money. But it's interesting. Andrea says here, going to a betting shop somehow feels a bit sleazy as a woman. I think a lot of women would say the same. It's not something you would particularly want to do, because in the 80s they were full of smoke and old blokes in, you know, sitting by a table watching the horses or the dogs. But playing bingo online, it is sold as being fun, sociable and glamorous. It's the marketing they use. It's got nothing to do with the actual gambling. It's all about come with your friends. I'm like, what? I'd rather go to real bingo because that would be hilarious. And I don't think I've ever actually done that. But that looks great fun. But actually just sitting there with the computer.
Yeah.
Oh, Merson. Yes, Joan. Yeah, it's all right. I thought you meant Paul Merson. Yeah. But that's quite a big thing on his wife, that she's got to have all the money and give him pocket money. That's the situation no partner really wants to have to be in with their loved one. No. But what choice has she got, really? I think it's the only way they're going to get through. But yeah, that's going to affect a relationship, isn't it?
Definitely. And I know with food, obviously sugar is definitely, your brain is stimulated, isn't it, by sugar, and it craves sugar and all of those
Yeah.
things.
They say that's an addiction, don't they? Yeah.
Yeah, which obviously when you eat in high calorie intake, it's usually high sugar as well. So therefore, that would be with that. I do wonder if alcohol, if they've done tests on the same thing with
Well,
alcohol.
alcohol gets converted to sugar, doesn't it? And so
Yeah, I
it gives you
suppose
energy.
so. It gives you the same thing, wouldn't it? Yeah, definitely.
But it's also the social aspects of alcohol, which is that it's used as a kind of social relaxant, particularly for people who are a bit less outgoing, shall we say, more introverted, are more likely to use it which is fine if that's all it's used for. But again,
as long as it doesn't go beyond a level. But that's the thing, is that moderation, as they say. But then
but one person's moderation isn't necessarily somebody else's. And is addiction, or do people have addictive personalities? That's always up for debate in the science world. Is somebody born with it? Is it heredity? Is it due to the environment? Is it to do with a conditioning over time? It's probably all of those things, to be honest. But is there a predisposition to addictive behaviour if the family has a pattern of it? I think there probably is. Hard to prove, though.
My dad had a bet every day. My dad bet every day, but his kind of bets were like, it was a couple of quid at the most.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. 85 pence. He does like 5p. He used to do 5 pence, lucky 15s or whatever they were, and then it would turn out to be about 85 pence, the bet itself, type of thing. But he did it every day.
Yeah, and that was probably as much habit as it was rather than addiction. It's probably just part of his routine, and gave a bit of structure to his day. And it was probably his pleasure. He probably thought, well, I haven't got too many other vices. That's my pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, hello. We've got Iris Harris now. That's Rebecca. I think that's Rebecca as well. There are a lot of Rebeccas I know in my world. Hello. Yeah. And Andrea said having a glass of wine makes you feel less anxious and less in your head. And it's true that's one of the very good benefits of some alcohol. That's why it's so successful in our society, because generally people like to unwind a bit. Yeah, absolutely. But like you say, it's like anything. If someone's going to keep going and absolutely never knows when to stop, or has to keep going until they're just to maintain feeling normal, which I think is what happens with some people who are chemically dependent on the alcohol. They're sort of being psychologically dependent and chemically dependent, and it all gets very difficult. Yeah.
I've never been much one for alcohol, to be honest. Like, in terms of, obviously, food was always my thing anyway, and I'd much rather have food than I would a drink, if that makes sense. Or a drink of any sort, really, because if I would, especially like now, I kind of look at it as calories, isn't it? So, in that sense, it's a waste of calories to have a drink. You know what I mean? I mean, I drink water, don't get me wrong, but like anything that has calories in it, type of thing.
Yeah, well, especially as part of your sort of current diet plan, you're obviously more aware of all that.
So, like, if I was in a first setting, what like Andrew was talking about, I used to just talk. That would be my thing. I'd waffle. And I still, I mean, I talk anyway constantly.
I was going to say you're naturally very outgoing, so maybe you didn't need that sort of lubricant to kind of get you in the groove.
But then, I guess also I shut myself away for a long time, so maybe I don't know. But when I had to go and do something, if I had to go and whatever, I'd speak. That would be my thing. I'd just waffle on and just constantly talk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Wow. Yeah. Andrew said she was scared to drink for years because she's the daughter of an alcoholic. And so you've literally been on the receiving end of it, Andrew. And that's, as I say, it's the people around the people with the addictions that can suffer hugely too. And I think there is a great need for help there. But yes, people tend to go one of either way. They either will follow in the footsteps of the person, even if they don't want to, because there's a psychological need there, or they will literally go so far away from it as to be, as you've done, as you did there. As you say, as you've gotten older and been, got more in tune with yourself, you kind of think it's okay to have some. It's not all or nothing. But yeah,
you're not the same person. Yeah.
Yeah, and Nick didn't know how to talk to people, so he drank. Again, I think that's very common, and particularly for fellas, I think that's, especially back in my days, a shy fellow, is just poor bloke, wants to be able to talk to people, and that's where it comes in as a social lubricant, and that in itself is okay. It's when it becomes, I can't talk to anybody unless I've had a drink, and that's when it becomes a problem.
Unless I'm completely smashed.
Yeah, in which case you'll make no sense anyway. But yeah, I'm at social situations, I'm quite introvert myself, and if I'm going to a party where I don't know anybody, and I'm like, I sort of steel myself, and then I make for the friendly face, and I just talk to one person at a time, and that's fine. But yeah, alcohol, some parties and things are more alcohol based than others, and sometimes you think, I wish they weren't, but what do you do? I'm trying to remember what that program was called, Rebecca. That it wasn't probably on Catch Up.
BBC iPlayer. It might have been something like, was it Addiction? No, Paul Merson. Something. But I suppose if you went on Google on iPlayer and you just put in Paul Merson, it will probably come up.
Yeah, or try YouTube and Google and just see if the Paul Merson program, and it will probably pop out.
Yeah,
it's not made that many, so I think it will be.
No, that's John saying the same.
Yeah,
I
did watch it a while back, and it was very well done. He's been through a lot.
Definitely. But then I think that's the thing, isn't it? Like, it's so vast within the world, like within everyday life, within people like everybody is probably battling their own, maybe not addiction, but thing that they've probably got to keep on the straight and narrow to, you know what I mean? Like, and yet it's not. There's a lot. I do feel like there's a lot more help for drink and for alcohol, drugs. Better now there is, I think. Betting's become
it's
more
starting to be, because awareness is coming about, and I think people are thankfully slightly less judgmental than they used to be. But there are areas where perhaps people will make fun of something or assume it's down to something else, and not see that it's either that it is a psychological issue, that it is an addiction type problem, and that those sort of things need big help. Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, how many people are addicted? How many people are addicted to the work they do? We all are. You have to be a little bit addicted to what you do, because otherwise you wouldn't keep doing it. You do it because you love it, and also you need the money. So there's a whole trade-off thing going there. But how many people are addicted to having to have designer labels or everything new? I think there was a lot of that. Maybe now that's changing again, because people are now realizing that actually it's better to recycle.
There's been people who won't wear the same clothes after they wear once, won't they?
There are some people who do that, yeah. But there's a whole raft of kind of issues, if you like, where for some reason people have got that idea in their head of, right, I have to do this, I'm compelled to do this, with there being no real basis. I'm almost the other way around. I feel very odd buying something brand new from a shop. It's like, oh gosh, aren't things expensive? It's like, yes, but I've saved all this money because I've done this, and I want that, and I need that, and I'm going to have that. That's fair enough. But I wouldn't say that I had an addictive personality particularly, but I know other people do have a psychological makeup sometimes it's thrill seeking, just the need to know they're alive, to feel challenged by life. And for other people, there's this whole thing, as we were saying earlier, about trying to feel more complete and more integrated, feel more whole. And that can come from all kinds of things, behaviours to try and fill that hole and make yourself feel better. Oh, hello, Babs. Yeah, just having a look there. Being aware is kind of like absolutely the key thing, isn't it? Drank, gambled, and overate. Definitely got the gene from my dad. Took many years to control it. Well done you for acknowledging what's gone on for you and to take control over it. Like anything, you will always be working with it, because I think especially when there's that genetic component, the drive can be very strong. But that's brilliant. And I'm addicted to picking up shiny things, jewellery and shiny stuff, bargains. That's my addiction, but it's a form of gambling, because I buy something and I gamble that someone's going to pay me more for it. Thankfully, it's a gamble that pretty much comes off. But you don't need to apologise, Bab. It's lovely to have you here, and just brilliant thumbs up to you. That's absolutely amazing.
I don't know. I mean, are we keeping this conversation going into next week, or do you think it's something we could come back to if we need to?
Well, we'll see what comments people make, if there are other things that they feel can be discussed here. Oh dear. So it's asking me if I want to reload a site. I wasn't aware I pressed anything. Anyway, we can come back to this another time. We can kind of potter around them all rather than having to have one after another. We could try something else next week. What do you all think out there? Do tell.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would like to be covered? Because I think that always helps as well. Do you know what I mean? We did have some suggestions before, things that we thought, didn't we? So
we had a little list,
yeah. She's somewhere in my notebook. I should go back.
We thought addiction, actually, funny enough, was next on this. That's amazing. Disability, life.
Oh, where did Heather go? I've took over our channel. Hopefully she'll be back in a second, but in the meantime, I'll see if I can find my notes. We did addiction, which was what we've ended up doing now. Disability, life in general, I think, was one. Just in the everyday, that kind of thing. I think work was one. Health was another. And I still haven't found my notes. But hopefully Heather will be back in a minute. Where's my notes? This is the thing with me, I write notes. Mental health, life, work, disability, what else have I wrote? Can't even read my own writing now, so that's good, isn't it?
Sorry, don't know what happened there. Back in the room.
I was trying to find my notes, and then I couldn't even read my own writing, which was good.
I suddenly realised you'd frozen, and then it kicked me out. Oh dear.
I just took over your channel for a little bit. It was fine.
That's absolutely fine. Apparently they've started covering up. I know they were covering up cigarettes, because people find it very odd that there's no branding or just pictures of bits of lungs and things on them. Those people I know who choose to smoke are not off-put by that. Just saying. And they're covering up alcohol. Now that really wouldn't help. I've not seen them covering up alcohol in my supermarket.
No, I've never seen it anywhere either.
I mean, if you want a flavoured gin, just come to my local Aldi. They've got every flavour you could possibly not want. Yes. Yeah, of course, Babs, does some help with that. That's absolutely as it should be. It's almost impossible to try and work with this stuff yourself. and friends and family love you dearly as they do, are probably not outside of the situation enough to be able, plus the expertise, of course, but they're just not in the best position to be able to help. So, yeah, being able to ask for help is probably one of the most valuable life lessons that one can learn.
Yeah, realizing you have a problem, especially because until you admit that, then you know what I mean.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to get to a very dark place before you'll actually admit that to yourself. That's fairly common. How bad's it got to get?
Yeah. Shall we just do whatever's next on the list then? And
okay, I've got disability on the list next.
Right. Well, we'll cover that then, and then we'll, you probably only need one for that again, and whether we'll come back to things again like we've done so far.
Exactly.
I think mental health probably be like a bigger one, maybe.
Yes, we've got that as well. I mean, they're not all completely disconnected. A lot of these things, physical health, mental health are intrinsically linked. There is no doubt about it. But thankfully, people talk a lot more about mental health than they used to. So I think we'll have some good chats about that.
Definitely. I think we've pretty much covered it, haven't we?
I think so. I think the chat.
Well, I know we've nowhere near covered it in terms of how it is, but in the terms of what this chat has been about so far.
Indeed, yes, indeed. It's I'm hoping that as things open up again, or there become fewer restrictions on life, that if people have got problems, that they're going to find it easier to access the help they need, because that has been a real problem over the last couple of years. I know certainly young people's mental health services have always been a bit of a shambles, and I'm saying well long before COVID, when I used to work with teenagers, there was always a massive issue with a thing called CAMS, which is the young people's mental health service. The lack of funding that it has, the lack of people, resources, expertise, you name it, they need more. But it's got far worse over this time. So hopefully, people should be able to access mental health service of any age, whether it's an addiction or something else. That people, it should be part of what a civilized society provides for its people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you, Joan.
Yeah, it's I think with everything that's happened over the past 2 years, they may find that they are struggling even more because of the amount of people who need more support, those who are already getting support, and now others who have been made ill because of it over the past 2 years. So
yeah, there'll be a fallout for quite a number of years from all of this, I'm sure, on lots of levels. Yeah. Oh, hello, Katie. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And yes, you've recovering from both. So yeah, good for you. Good for you.
Good for you. It must be hard to work through that.
Oh, detox last February. Wow. Yeah, and you've been cleaned up. Well done. Like I say, it is one day at a time, isn't it, with something like that? But yeah, and that's absolutely brilliant.
Going through the past year, and just 2 years, isn't it? 18 months or whatever it's been. Yeah. Especially hard to do it in that time frame as well. So definitely.
Yeah,
do you have like things that you do to help you, like every day, like I don't know, ritual? Well, not rituals, maybe it's not the right word. Sort of steps or something, like, because I know that with the food thing, we have like, I'm forgetting the name of it. I think it's called a RAP plan, something like that. And they do it's kind of like like a plan of things that you can do if you start to feel lower or in the need to whatever, you know what I mean? Like So I just wondered if it was something that everybody does. I suppose everybody's would be different as well. You know what I mean?
But finding the things that can help you to
Yeah,
sort of
help
be
you
aware
with
and
yeah,
decide
yeah.
to do something different.
I know that there was a lady on TikTok who she had a gambling habit, and she'd put it out there on TikTok um, to use TikTok to help her keep on the straight and narrow, and you know what I mean, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, anything that can help, and obviously the support networks that can be provided online.
Hmm.
Well, it can work either way, can't it? But
Yeah,
there are people out there who can be supportive. Yeah, access
like
to information. Yeah, and finding other ways of coping with the pain that is what is driving the addiction in the first place. I think
yeah,
that's the key.
like obviously, you know, for me, taking photographs, when I take photographs, I forget everything, so it gives us that same thing that food does in a sense. It's just
Yeah,
not always it's not as easy and as ready and available to be able to do, if that
no,
makes
because
sense.
you like to get out, don't you? Or at least,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, and like the weather's been terrible recently, so that's had an effect. You know what I mean? And as to
Of
where I
course.
can go, and obviously not being very well has had the same effect, which has made things worse. Which is then, I suppose, probably what drove us to buy things that I didn't really need. When you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the main thing is that you'll start feeling better and the weather will get better, so you are going to be able to go
And then
out
I can
again.
be
It's
able
like
to,
there is a light at the end of the tunnel with that.
yeah, I can go and get back, especially with the fact that it's coming up to spring and summer, and yeah, which is good because that means a lot of much better weather, hopefully.
Yeah, yeah. And it does affect people's mood, the weather, without a doubt. A bit of blue sky works wonders.
Hey, Babs. Yeah, to a very dark place, but all good now. I was in our 30s, so I can get through it. I'm in my 60s now, never goes away completely. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, those sort of things are always there, so you always need to maintain a level of vigilance and awareness and knowing yourself. Really, the better you know yourself, with even the bits you don't like and the bits that you wish you weren't, and all of that, if you can accept that, it goes some way towards
Yeah,
recovery. Yeah.
definitely. Well, we're just about to hit an hour.
We are. I think we have jabbered. We have jabbered for a while, in
That's
spite
all.
of having a quick interlude when I shut myself out of my own channel.
Yeah. It's always weird. Like if I'm on my own channel, I'm on my own. It's fine. But if like that happens and I'm on someone else's, I'm like, ah.
Yeah, luckily I was able. You just go and come back in on your own channel. It's all right. You can.
And then I just
I
do my
sent you
thing.
the
It's
link, so I could just do it.
like,
Yeah,
yeah,
great
waffle.
fun.
Just go and waffle on or whatever. So that
Well,
worked.
so
But yeah,
thank you
we
very much. Thank you, the audience, for joining us. It's been lovely to have you. Like I say, any questions, thoughts, whatever, do stick them in the comments below afters, and we can take note of that and build that into whatever we offer next time. But it's looking as if next time we may be discussing a bit around disability. So the obvious ones and the less obvious ones, I suspect, many
yes,
forms.
which will be on my channel. Yeah, because
It'll
we're
be on yours, Lainey, next week. Yeah,
yeah.
we'll try and remember this. It gets
Yeah.
complicated.
Katie's just saying I keep myself busy mainly walking, reading. I find if I'm not busy, my mind will wander. I've been lucky to get support and help. Yeah, and I definitely agree with keeping yourself busy. Like it
Having structure.
massively helps having structure, having things to do, and doing things you love. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
depends
then
where
she
you
knows
are.
everything's
There's a
not
level
with
of that.
the postcode system type of thing. Yeah.
And it does depend on which part of the country you're in as to what help you can get and when. It's always been like that. It probably is more than ever now. But hopefully, the more people get aware of it, the more pressure there'll be for stuff to be provided. That's what we need.
Yes, definitely. And I think if there was more stuff provided around mental health, that would lead to less issues around other things that
Sure.
the health that the NHS is used for, in terms of like drink and drugs and food addiction and any of those, you know what I mean? That
Yeah.
surely if they're treating the problem before it becomes a problem, then that would help. I think I know what I mean.
I know what you mean. Yeah, definitely make a big difference to the way things work.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. Anyway, thank you so much to everyone. And we will see you next week on my channel.
We will indeed. We'll be back. So take care, everyone, and we will see you. Here comes the awkward waving. Saying goodbye now.